Welcome back, everybody, to the Breakthrough Moment podcast. Today's special guest is Zaid, the Circadian Biologist. Thank you for joining us today, mate.
Thank you, brother. Excited for a fun conversation here.
Me too. So let me do a quick little intro and let's dive into this. Super curious about your breakthrough moments. For those of you who are joining the podcast for the first time, the Breakthrough Moment is all around sharing successful entrepreneurs, influencers, content creators, pivotal moment in their life that broke them into another level of awareness or insight that allowed them to help more people, make more money, and really take their lives to the next level. So I'm really excited to have you here as a special guest. Let me do a quick little intro. For those of you who don't know Zaid, he's a circadian biology educator, bridging sunlight, biophysics, and lifestyle, designed to help people realign their biology with nature's rhythms. Through his work, he simplifies complex science, challenges modern health myths, and teaches practical protocols rooted in light, timing, and ancestral wisdom. And what I'll say about your content, I got connected to your content on Instagram. I see it every day. I'm always sharing your content. I'm like, this is so practical. It's so easy to digest. And for such a big concept that we talk about quantum and light and mitochondria, you really make it easy to digest. And so really thank you for simplifying it for people. I've learned a lot. I've shared it with so many people. I think there's like over 50 of my friends that follow you as well. And I just really curious to interview you. So thank you for your time. Let's dive into it. What has been your breakthrough moment? What is it about that moment that really, I guess, allowed you to step into who you are today?
So this is something I reference often, but I think it's arguably the most important and transformative experience in my life, and that was the passing of my father. So I was 18 at the time, and I was pursuing soccer professionally. That was a childhood dream of mine, or football for those who are outside of the U.S. And I traveled to different countries and tried to pursue that in many different means. Didn't end up working out in the way that I wanted it to, but I think everything happens for a reason. And so my father actually he experienced a second heart attack and then went into a coma while I was overseas. And so that was definitely something that I was grappling with. There's this kind of isolation that I had at the time because I didn't have any family or friends around. I was doing my own thing halfway across the world. And that was something I definitely had to work through. But eventually that heart attack went into a coma, led into his passing. And that's what really shifted my mind in terms of moving from athleticism and focusing on soccer to just being obsessed about health more specifically. And then eventually finding things like circadian biology, which, I really focus a lot of my work on today. So it's been a very pivotal experience for me. I think that ultimately it's the experience that allowed me to go from a boy to a man. I think that's one of the initiation rituals that men need to go through if they want to really unlock masculinity in its full capacity. It's just that going through that death of a parent, but more specifically a father, I think is very difficult. But I think it's it will be necessary over time to cultivate the man that you are today.
Sorry to hear that. And of course, that would have been a massive pivotal moment for you. I've never had a parent die, but I've had friends and friends of friends die. So it's very shocking. Do you have any, I guess, support or advice for anyone who might be going through something similar at the moment?
I mean, look, I spent a lot of time going inward, as cliche as that might sound, but just essentially thinking on concepts like mortality and what life is about and what direction do I want to take my life in after this it's a traumatizing experience, for lack of a better word, at least in the moment. But I think the biggest thing that people can do is to try to just digest the experience as much as they can. Sit in silence if need be. I think everyone's different in the sense that some people will move away from loved ones for a short period, while others will move closer to them. I think that's all natural. It just depends on how people cope. But trying to adjust the expectation or the experience in your mind to where you kind of want to think of it as a growth experience as opposed to something that's completely devastating and offers no value. I think that's the biggest and most important thing in my mind, because growth mindset is crucial for me. I don't see how I could have made it out of an experience like that without a growth mindset. And it's interesting because even during the time, I knew that I would get something valuable out of that experience, whether it's a piece of wisdom or just more experience. a story to tell. So yeah, just kind of keeping your mind in that like line of thinking, I think is really key.
Yeah, you touched upon the importance of like a growth mindset, rather than seeing it as like, oh, this is happening to me, you're seeing it like this is happening for me, or kind of on the way instead of in the way.
Mm.
Who helped you develop the growth mindset? Because I think that's also maybe a big key to the puzzle, what you're doing.
I don't think there's any person that actually allowed me to help facilitate that. I think it's more so the focus on sport at a young age that really helped me in massive ways. I mean, I started playing soccer at the age of 4, and I did not stop until I was like 25, 26. So it was a true pursuit of mastery for me. I'm also very big on mastery, and I think that comes with the expectation that you have a growth mindset, because you're going to go through ups and downs, or you're actually going to spend a lot of time on the plateau where it seems like nothing's happening and it seems like no growth is occurring. But I think learning to get comfortable in that space and continue to work the process is very key. So I just think it comes naturally with being a, competitive athlete at a young age.
For sure. The community, having people around, allowing us to have healthy competition to stretch ourselves and our mind is super cool. Well, how do you define mastery? I'm curious.
Ooh, that's a good question. I would probably define it as the dedication to one thing. Yeah, I think it would be that simple, because when I think back to how I approach soccer, when I think back to even how I approach the circadian work, it's a real obsession. So actually, that might be a better word, obsession. You have a complete and overwhelming obsession about one thing, and you really orient your mind and life around that given subject. And so it's complete dedication. Giving yourself totally to it, I think, is one of the most key pillars to mastery in general, for sure.
This is such an important topic that I chat with some of my friends and my inner circle about, and it's and mostly my homies, my male friends who are we're all going through something different. Some are succeeding in business, some are struggling, some are refining themselves, some are family orientated, and I think it like comes back to what you mentioned: obsession, one thing, focus, and yeah, killing that boy inside and then that allows the man to kind of to transform us to transform into the man.
Mm.
So this is super cool.
And sorry to interrupt, but by the way, people think that obsession is like it's a word that's tossed around a lot in the personal development space and at large in society. But I do think that there's an element of unhealthy tendencies that go along with obsession. I mean, if you look at the greats in history, they always had some sort of maniacal or tendency or obsessive tendency that ended up creating some sort of negative health outcome. And so what I'm learning to do is balance that, is find that balance, because if you focus too much on a given thing, you can be consumed by it. And I mean, that's ultimately why they call it an edge, right? Because it can cut you, and because you can actually get hurt by that edge that you have. So that's an important nuance that I want people to understand, because it's not all, rainbows and butterflies. I mean, it's something that's very difficult to go through, and it's almost like you are cursed with a blessing, if that makes sense. It's a very weird paradox.
One of my mentors actually said, yeah, he called it the affliction. It's like there's a level, the passion, there's pain and pleasure. It's not just all sunshine and rainbows. That's
Yeah.
and what did Bruce Lee say? He said, don't fear the man who has 1,000 different kicks, fear the man who's perfected one kick 1,000 times. And
Wow.
so like it just leans on that philosophy. But as you said, the disadvantage of mastery is lack of balance. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges I notice amongst some of my entrepreneurial friends or I guess this world we live in is definitely geared towards work, 9 to 5, or even if you're an entrepreneur, 9 till 9, or 7 till 11, just nonstop growth. And so that's why I think this circadian biology stuff is so important. So give people an introduction of like, you went through what you went through, going through the loss of your father. How did you then stumble across the circadian biology philosophy and science?
Well, after that experience, it's kind of like a switch flipped in my mind. I mean, it was kind of crazy how obsessive I became about studying health in general. So, I would go down the rabbit holes of nutrition or hydration, supplementation, detox. All of these things were kind of put together over time in terms of my study. And there was a weird period where it was like an entire year after my father passed, where I was just like completely isolated into myself and just really dedicated a lot of my time and energy to studying health in general. I mean, to the point where I would wasn't I it's hard to say that I was depressed. I was more just taking it all in. It was like an um extended phase of just considering what all of this means in my life. And so I would spend hours pacing around the house, headphones in, listening to different health podcasts, like that kind of lifestyle. And ultimately it led me to circadian biology through the work of Dr. Jack Kruse, as you mentioned. And my first time listening to him with Andrew Huberman, Rick Rubin on the Tetragrammaton podcast was really awesome, because that's what shifted my mind into another gear to where I was like, okay, circadian biology is the thing that I have to focus on essentially for the rest of my life, because it just had a gravity to it, and my soul resonated with it. And so from there, it's taken on a life of its own, and I'm very grateful for that, because it's given me a new perspective on health. It's given me, in my opinion, a first principles root cause perspective, which allows me to help myself, my family, and many different people around the world through this style of education. Really,
That's really interesting, because you said you had to figure this out. You had to go all in on figuring this out. You'd studied the nutrition, the supplements, the detox, the hydration, the fitness stuff. Yet this was the missing piece of the puzzle. This was like
yeah.
the core root of everything. And so, like, why? What? Like, when did you have that moment of like, hang on a minute, this trumps, or this is the foundation of everything else? Because I think that's the decision. That's like the realization I had when I started getting into this work. I was like, oh, everything else has a place, but
Mm.
this is the nucleus of the equation type thing. I don't know. How do you explain
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. I think you explained it very well. I think circadian biology is really the bridge that connects, or it's the unifying point that connects connects everything else from nutrition. I mean, if you look at the human body as a circadian system, every aspect of the human body is built around circadian biology, whether it be light sensing proteins or mitochondria, how melanin. And so when I start to go down rabbit holes of nutrition, okay, obviously food is a manifestation of photosynthesis. So there we go. Sun and and light and dark cycle and circadian principles takes a higher step above nutrition in the hierarchy. When it comes to exercise, various aspects of exercise are controlled by circadian mechanisms. Sleep architecture is basically one and the same with circadian biology and circadian architecture. So all of these things have their nexus point, I guess, and they ultimately connect to the circadian mechanism as the most foundational aspect of health. And it goes a level deeper, because a lot of people think about health as a game of biochemistry, but that's not actually the deepest layer. Biophysics is the deepest layer, to where we begin to study the quantum phenomena in the body, how physics interacts with various aspects of the human body. And so to me, it makes sense. I don't think we can go a level deeper outside of that.
Super cool. That's like, it's what I try and, wake people up to. It's like, guys, like, yes, what you're doing is important, and there's a deeper level, and there's more to this equation. Like, this is so important. So just some things that you threw out there that maybe some people don't understand. What help people understand mitochondria?
So for me, mitochondria are circadian controlled light sensing and electromagnetic organelles. Sounds like a mouthful, but I think ultimately we have to understand that mitochondria are responsible for many different, probably thousands of different roles, and they are central to your health. Meaning that if you look at any part of the body, if you look at the eyes, let's say, and you have defective mitochondria that do not work as they should in that area, then you're going to have some sort of ocular or eye manifestation that is negative. So you could have floaters, you could be blind, you could suffer with myopia or something of that nature. So the mitochondria are essentially the key to whether any part of the body is going to function optimally or suboptimally. And for me, I do think that there's this intricate relationship between mitochondria and the light and dark cycle. I think they need bright days outside under full spectrum sunlight and dark nights after nightfall using very minimal circadian friendly lighting like candlelight or incandescence. Um, and so there's a lot of incredible things to understand about mitochondria. Like, for example, they're responsible for steroidogenesis. All of your sex steroid hormones come from the mitochondria first. They produce ATP, which is your body's energy currency. There's a lot to it, but I think they're very, very crucial for human health.
Amazing. Yeah, how I kind of understand it is that the mitochondria are the engines to the cells. Is that right?
That's right I think that in one part, that's correct, yeah, but it doesn't encapsulate the entire story. So it's kind of like you're looking at the tip of the iceberg, but there's a lot more underneath the water that can be explored with mitochondrial function and how they work.
And so what would be you mentioned light during the day for the mitochondria. This is helping steroids in the body or our sex hormones and things like that. I'm guessing other processes throughout the body, and then darkness at night, so light and dark. What else can we do to support the mitochondria?
I mean, getting cold is a good way to do that. Cruz has talked about how mitochondria kind of act like Carnot heat engines, meaning they just become a very efficient, stunningly efficient engine when they get hot. And so when your external temperature or when your external skin gets cold, mitochondria compensate by getting hot. The hotter they get, the more efficient they become in producing energy. So definitely get cold by whatever means. You can just go outside in ambient air temperature, take your shirt off, wear shorts. If you want to do an ice bath or a cold shower, by all means, I think that helps if you are prepared to do that. Outside of that, exercise is able to stimulate mitochondrial biogenesis, so the production of new mitochondria, which is pretty cool. And what else? Fasting definitely helps to some degree. Nutrition, just full spectrum, high quality nutrition from magnesium intake to zinc to copper, all that stuff is very important. And sleep, of course, I think it comes down to all the fundamentals. Like a lot of people like to focus on the biohacks. The biohacks are not going to come as close to the fundamentals of human health as it relates to evolutionary and circadian biology.
Got it. I always heard that the mitochondria took in electrons, and the electrons came in from food that we eat, the ground that we stand on, and from light, grounding, and food. Is that right? They're the main areas we're getting electrons?
Pretty much. I mean, food for sure, grounding for sure. Your body's actually designed to take in free electrons through the negatively charged Earth's surface. I mean, it's incredible. Even your feet and palms have these things called eccrine sweat glands, which are semiconductive, allow free electron flow. I mean, that's a rabbit hole in and of itself. The more interesting one, and I think the more hotly debated one, is whether sunlight, full spectrum sunlight in and of itself can create free electrons. I do think that's true. The main part of the discussion is melanin. I think melanin is the bridge between that because of a process known as the photoelectric effect. And so the theory is when sunlight hits melanin on your skin and within your body, you're able to produce free electrons as a result of some sort of state change. Yeah, I mean, I think the literature can support that, but there's some areas of that are hotly debated. So, yeah.
Super interesting. I think the reason I'm asking is how can people just become practical with their health? How do they integrate this into their lifestyle? I'm in New York right now, and people are inside a lot of the time, around a lot of Wi-Fi, wearing shoes, not grounded. I'm trying to go to the Central Park in the morning and at night to ground, but I really have to be conscious of, I need to do that a little bit more compared to being in Australia, living next to the beach, right? I was so grateful to live near the beach. It's so different. But in doing that, say living in a city, not grounding, not getting a light, not getting a tan, not having your food in check, what actually happens to the mitochondria? And then how does that relate to, say, the heart disease that your dad had, or people's dementia, and Alzheimer's, which is skyrocketing, or people's diabetes and cancer? Is that inevitably what happens when the mitochondria is, say, depleted? It leads to those types of illnesses and disease?
I do think so. I think if you look at all chronic disease states today, whether it be cancer, autoimmunity, heart disease, they can all be traced back fundamentally to mitochondrial dysfunction. And so the way that you get mitochondrial dysfunction over time and the way you destroy mitochondrial colonies in your body, because keep in mind, we have trillions of mitochondria. So there's the question of why does it take 20, 30, 40 years for people to manifest some sort of disease that eventually leads to their passing? I think that's just because of the sheer resilience involved with the human body in terms of how many mitochondria we have. Human body is extremely resilient, and it's kind of shocking to see, especially in this day and age. But with that being said, I think if you move away from nature and you move away from the circadian alignment that we're talking about, you are going to get the destruction of mitochondria over time. And so what does that look like? If you are in a city, let's say you live right next to a cell tower. Well, that's going to be, releasing frequencies that are not designed, that your body are not designed to receive. For example, mitochondria actually evolved to sense natural EMF or electromagnetic frequencies. So they're designed to pick up on geomagnetic fields and Schumann resonance from the earth and that sort of thing. But when you start to introduce man-made foreign frequencies in the form of 5G, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, all that stuff, that does cause second and third order consequences to mitochondrial function. For example, it will actually open up voltage gated calcium channels and allow an influx of calcium into the cell. And that has, a host of problems in and of itself. But, if you're living under isolated blue light in and of itself is considered part of the electromagnetic spectrum. So that is going to have a detrimental effect on mitochondria. If you have nutrient deficiencies, chronic sleep deprivation, all of these things play a fundamental role in causing that kind of change in your body. And I mean, there's a lot more to it outside of mitochondria, but I do think that they are about as root cause as you can get.
Gosh, there's so many rabbit holes there that I could dive down, but I just want to keep it really practical and really simple for people. So, and then what's the correlation between, what do you think was your kind of hypothesis on how did that end up impacting your dad? Did he have a similar lifestyle that you might have traced back to having a malfunction in mitochondria, or was it something else related?
I think it is, number one, chronic stress was a big thing. That in and of itself can definitely take a person out. Nutrient deficiencies, I would not be shocked if he had some sort of nutrient deficiencies. We never did any like deep dive into blood testing or anything like that. He was never focused on health to that degree. Even though he was very physically fit at the age of 51, he was actually my physical education teacher, so I learned a lot from him in that respect. And he could run around most 20-year-olds these days for sure. But it just points to the idea that it's not just about nutrition and exercise. That's not going to be your saving grace if you want to prevent disease these days. You have to be more holistic and comprehensive about how you approach this. And so that coupled with the fact that he probably didn't get enough sun, too much time under isolated blue, sleep deprivation that is caused by chronic stress and late nights under blue light, maybe eating late at night, maybe some lifestyle habits from, his early 20s, 30s that I wasn't aware of. All of these things I think play a key role. But when it comes to heart disease, I mean, I have some very interesting ideas on that nowadays, but I do think it does track back to his lifestyle fundamentally.
I think it's interesting. The last few years, I've been studying a lot of the circadian stuff for maybe 5 years or so. Before that, I was big on nutrition and fitness. And then I was like, there's something missing. This is the circadian stuff. And I'm like, this is such a great piece of the puzzle. But I feel like the emotional side has a massive part to play as well. How do you see the emotional state of someone? Obviously the stress is part of that, whether it's the cortisol, but there's lots to say from like Chinese medicine and certain emotions of like sadness being kept in, or anger being kept in the liver, and grief being stored in, I think, the lungs or something like this. So how do you see emotions coming into play with this? Because I feel like sometimes someone's emotional state from something that may have happened externally or internally can shut their whole system down, regardless of how much sunlight, and good healthy stuff they're doing.
Oh yeah, I think it's just as important as anything physical. I think that the emotional body is a very interesting subject. There is a book called The Body Keeps the Score. I forgot the author, but it's a really fun deep dive into how essentially the body stores emotional trauma and then quite literally holds on to it physically and then spits it out in terms of like physical manifestations. So I do think that plays a key role. I think that if you're somebody who doesn't know how to relate to your emotions, that's a big problem. That's something you really have to work on. And it's a lot of people focus on exercise and building more muscle and training in the gym, but you do have to build, the emotional muscle as well. You do have to understand how to navigate that realm in terms of its nuance, in terms of how you're reacting to different people in your life. That's something that I learn day to day, especially with my wife and my child. Like you have to be very careful about certain habits that you have, or emotional habits that you've picked up on from early life. Like that's a very real thing. And it's not to say you have to like go through your entire life situation or trauma with a fine-tooth comb. I think there is a point to where that becomes more detrimental than helpful. But there's some very basic things and questions that you can do and ask yourself that would help you to develop a healthier relationship with your emotions. And so even just acknowledging what a certain emotion is in the moment, like, okay, you feel angry, tell yourself, you know what, I feel angry. Just labeling the emotion in and of itself can have a very therapeutic effect. And just being aware of the triggers as well, like what actually triggers you. I think that can teach you a lot about yourself and how you grew up around your family. There's a lot to it, but I think that's kind of stuff can help.
No wonder this health equation is so complex, right? It's just like food, movement, lifestyle, in the house, out of the house, internal mindset, gut health,
Because it's all the same. It's all one. There's no distinction between any of them.
Tell me more.
It's just, it comes down to how, like, you either fundamentally have a view of the world as a reductionist or as someone who appreciates holism. And so I love to make this distinction because let's say, for example, a lot of centralized medicine views the body from a reductive lens, meaning they only look at one isolated part of a system and they completely ignore the other parts, and they completely ignore how all of those parts interact with one another. There's an interconnectedness that is involved with the human body and also life at large. And for me, I love to make this distinction between reductionism and holism. Holism is, thinking about life and human health from more of a systems-based type of thinking. So when we understand systems thinking, we understand that you can't just recklessly throw an input into the system or else it creates a backfiring mechanism. You have to appreciate the complexity involved with systems. You have to study the system from a very comprehensive angle. And so there's a lot that goes into it. There's also a fantastic YouTube channel, a guy by the name of Leo Gura, actualize.org. And he has some very cool topics on this. I mean, systems thinking and emotions and basically personal development at a very high level. So definitely suggest anybody to check him out.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, this is holism. I've actually never heard of that. So that makes total sense. I'd like to think that I'm a holism advocate for sure.
And a lot of people, like, they don't like the word holistic because it kind of gets attached to the new age, hippy dippy, like, health scene nowadays. But I think it's a shame that it's been bastardized.
So then you started learning about circadian. You started to put the pieces of the puzzle together for your dad, for yourself, now for your family. And then you've started making awesome content. You've got this cool podcast as well, the 2 a.m. project. And your reels are like so addictive to learn about. If you like learning about this type of stuff, guys, check out his Instagram. I'll put the link around here. But how did you then transition to then creating content? Have you always been creative? How did you make that jump?
No, believe it or not, I can't recall always being creative. I think I was just more of like this athlete type archetype growing up. I think that it was around 2017, 2018 when I first got onto Twitter, when it was called Twitter, before it was called X. And I found, I don't know if you're familiar with Alexander Cortez on X. Yeah, he basically talks a lot about fitness and nutrition. He's got a very interesting character. He talks a lot about this work comprehensively. He's starting to get into the circadian stuff, but he did these live periscopes back in the day when Periscope was still a thing. He talked about all sorts of different subjects like training, and he had some pretty witty answers to questions. And he was also talking about content a lot, and that kind of got my mind jogging on a path to where I started to make my own content. And so if you look at my archives on Twitter, I mean, I was posting tweets about personal development and death and life and all this stuff. And it kind of evolved in a certain way to where, I got into the health stuff and circadian biology, and then I changed my account towards that. But it's been a very cool process, that along with learning how to be consistent online, learning how to make more money online as a result of your labor. I think that's very key. And then kind of scaling that in a way to where you can support yourself off the internet alone, which I think is a really incredible opportunity these days in 2025. But yeah, super grateful for everything. And I think that started in 2017, 2018, around there.
That's so interesting. Well, my kind of realization to jump into online, because I started with YouTube, was Gary Vee's Crush It book.
Yeah. I remember that.
His energy of like, turn your passion into profit. Like, you could do this. So what was it about what Alexander said that you were like, oh, like, I'm going to start sharing more? Because I think a lot of people have a lot of fear, judgment, self-criticism, and they have some amazing things they should share. And maybe some people shouldn't share things, but like those people that really want to, I guess, amplify their story and message. How do you, what allowed you to have that, that switch flipped for you?
To tell you the truth, I think it was my father's death. I think that really shifted my mind to think in a more philosophical way, believe it or not. And I think that naturally comes when you start to think about things like life and death. I mean, your your ability to expand into different realms is just a given if you go through something like that. And so it added a lot more flavor to how I think. It started to get my mind to think about different subjects and kind of have this eclectic mind to where I merge a lot of different concepts. But starting out making content, I mean, I was I was your average, quote dispensing type of character. I mean, I wasn't creating authentic content in the way that I am now, but I think there is a growth phase to all of that stuff. And I think that it's a you learn a lot. You learn a lot through the journey. And for me, now it's just about evolving how I actually make content. And so if you've seen my content in the past 5 or 6 months, there's a real element of beauty that's been added to it, whether it be the Instagram covers or how I'm making reels. And that's all stuff that I'm improving upon. But yeah, I think the death of my father definitely expanded my mind in a way that nothing else can. And then I don't know what your stance is on these subjects, but I threw in a little bit of psychedelic therapy and used used psilocybin mushrooms, used LSD and all these things to kind of just experiment and whatnot because I've been learning a lot about that. And I think that changed my mind in a certain way as well, for the better. I think there's a lot of propaganda and demonization of those compounds. But either way, all of this stuff comes together to kind of lead me in the path that I'm in now.
Sure. No, I'm a big believer in intentional uh, psychedelic use for sure. I've seen some
Yeah.
amazing transformations. I think unconscious psychedelic use is not
That's a big problem.
anything unconscious actually is not so good. So yeah, that's so do you create your own content purely? Do you have a team? Like what's your creative process? Do you like set some time aside for writing? Do you read or meditate or like how? I'm so curious.
I mean, just myself. Really, it's a one-man show. I think writing has been instrumental to the process. I think that's kind of the unifying skill, kind of in the same way that circadian biology unifies nutrition and all these other health subjects. Writing for me has been central because it's allowed me to bring in the circadian work. It's allowed me to bring in, stuff from the 2 a.m. podcast, so a lot of different things that I do. And it's given me the ability to express in a way that I couldn't have previously because I just didn't have that skill of writing. And so this is something I forgot to mention, but I started on medium.com. I started writing around that 2017, 2018 period. And the one thing that I took away from Alexander was that I needed to commit to a 1 year of writing, one post every single day, nonstop. And I think I got to around 300 days of just posting one article a day. And that was something that helped me immensely, not only to develop the consistency, but also to improve writing and go forward with that skill. So yeah, it's a one-man show. I use Canva a lot for my content. I do have ChatGPT as an assistant. I want to be very clear that I see a lot of people writing their content with ChatGPT, just full on copy paste. I am not a supporter of that. I think it harms you more than it helps you. And I do think it's a valuable research tool to just dive in and give you a different perspective at the very least. So outside of that, yeah, I mean, life experience is something that I rely on. As being a father, my son's 2 now, so that's pretty cool. That's informed my work in various ways with the circadian stuff. And yeah, I just like to rely on life experience as well to try to gain an edge from the content perspective.
Well, so this is really valuable stuff. Thanks for sharing, man. So, a couple more questions. So, I'm curious. You've got a baby now. You've got a family, which is awesome. There's not just the health equation in terms of your own personal gain. It's now like how can it help your family? And now, obviously, online, you've got this global kind of community and family building. But can you give us a rundown of like what is your morning routine, lunch routine, evening routine, sleep routine? I'm sure it's probably quite dialed in right now, especially with a baby in the house.
Yeah,
So
well, I mean,
is that the red light on at the moment?
yeah, I mean, if I were to push this all the way, it would be kind of intense. But yeah, it's just a red light panel for infrared, red, just as a way to supplement those longer wavelengths inside. But yeah, I mean, the routine it's pretty consistent. I'm not really somebody who likes to go out too much. I have my moments. I don't travel that much, so my lifestyle is pretty simple and oriented around family and work nowadays. But I wake up generally about 10 to 20 minutes before sunrise, so a little bit after daybreak, and I immediately go outside. Let's say 10, 15 minutes. I'll just sit on the patio just to allow, that light signal to get into my eyes and onto my skin to start the day. And, I'll just start to warm up for the day. I'll start to think about different ideas. Right now, my son and wife are waking up a little bit after me. So it gives me some time and space to write or to think about what I want to create content wise and whatnot, do podcasts like these in the early morning. And then from that point, early morning breakfast, I like high protein, high fat for the most part. Typically skew lower carb. And then I'll just go for a walk, skin in the game, sunbathe any way that I can, be out there for UVA rise, be out there when UVB comes out. A lot of this stuff is very intentional, might sound overwhelming to people who don't practice the circadian stuff, but you start to develop a routine around it and it becomes second nature at a certain point. And then, yeah, I mean, the middle of the day looks different depending on what I do. Sometimes I'll take my son for a nap. He'll nap in the car while I drive. I'll listen to podcasts. I'm a big football fan, so I'm a big Arsenal fan as well. So I'm big on keeping up with the team and whatnot. And then hang out with friends towards the nighttime. That's where I think I go dark mode for the most part, 80 to 90% of the way. And I'll use the incandescence. I'll use the red incandescence firelight. We have sconces all over the house where we can put candles and just light them up. It's a pretty cool thing that we've added. Early to bed, early to rise. I don't think there's a combination that beats that. Yeah, just try to fit in whatever I need to do during the day.
Sounds so simple, but I'm sure like people are going to have so many questions. How, like, do you recommend any products? Like, what's the best red light? What's the best candles? There's bulbs out there. Like,
Yeah,
any
it's funny because my wife, like, I call myself a simple man, but my wife thinks I'm a very complex person. But I think the lifestyle component is super simple. I don't like complexity from a lifestyle perspective, even though you're going to have some of that inevitably. But in terms of things that I use, I mean, I have a Mitolux sun lamp from the company Mitolux that I just like to add as supplemental red and infrared. If I want to use UV off of this, I can, but I typically, 90% of the time, I go for sunbathing outside to get UV for very specific reasons. But products outside of that, I mean, methylene blue tallow balm, the Meraki Moo is really great. It's a combination of beef tallow and methylene blue, really great for the skin. Chromolux in terms of incandescent bulbs is really fantastic. And then, I mean, if you're in California, the candles that I have are from Busy Bees Candle Company. So just a few recommendations if that helps. But again, super simple.
What about blue blocking glasses?
Yeah, I have the ones from Midwest Red Light Therapy. Really high quality, super cheap, around $40 a pair. I suggest that people get either the orange or the red. The red is intense. I mean, even intense for me to where I can't see at night because it's just such an overwhelming color that blocks all blue and green. And so go for the orange ones I think for most people, that's the best option because then you can drive potentially at night if you need to do that. Use the blue blockers. Some people might get a little bit too tired, so just be wary of that. Experiment. And yeah, I think the clear blue blockers are completely useless. Don't use those because they don't actually block those wavelengths. The yellow ones are decent for daytime, but I don't really use them. That's kind of the hierarchy to blue blockers.
And what about EMF? Like, I know when I'm set up in my house, I'm traveling at the moment, so it's really tricky. I usually do Ethernet to my computer, Ethernet to my phone. Do you do that too?
I'm not as good as you when it comes to the Ethernet. That's something that I'm going to explore. To be honest, I should be dialed in on that end, but there's some simple habits that I have. Like, I mean, I almost never have Bluetooth on. I never put my laptop on my lap, never put my phone to, my skull. I have the wired headphones with the bead to reduce the electromagnetic, I guess, power from it. I haven't studied these beads. I just really bought them from a recommendation from a friend. And LTE does go on when I'm outside because I do need connection. But again, I try to keep my phone as far away from my body as I can. Never have the phone in my pocket. The home environment's interesting. I think that, you can have Wi-Fi and whatnot, but I think just trying to limit use as much as you can, turning it off when you don't need it. But I think the most important thing for me is just making sure I'm aligned with the light and dark cycle from an EMF standpoint. So sunrise, midday sunbathing, building more melanin, which has been shown to have a protective effect to a great degree against non-native EMF. And then the darkness at night, I think, is key. So, not making sure to avoid sleeping next to an outlet, leaving things unplugged, not having the phone on blue after nightfall. That stuff I think is important in my mind.
So good. You mentioned one thing, not having your phone on you or in your pocket. Why is that? Is that
Um,
even with flight mode off? Flight
so
mode
I do,
on?
yeah, I do actually turn airplane mode on if I do put it in the pocket. I'm very strict about that because there's a phenomenon known as the inverse square law, meaning that whatever the source of either native or non-native EMF, the strength of those frequencies drop off exponentially the farther you get from the source. And so this works both ways. It's two-way street. So the reason why grounding is so powerful is because you're directly connected to the free electron surface of the earth. The reason why you can protect yourself pretty easily from, let's say, the Bluetooth on your phone is because the farther you move the phone away, the more exponential the drop off of that frequency. And so that actually simplifies a lot of the work. Distance is the most important thing to protect yourself, which is why I don't want people living right next to a cell tower or putting the phone to their skull or wearing AirPods and having Bluetooth headphones, which directly transmit right into your inner cochlea and then right to the brain. That's a key thing that I think is very important for people to understand.
It's so interesting. There was this friend of a friend. They were trying to get pregnant, a couple trying to get pregnant, and she had tried everything. He had tried everything, and then they were like, "This isn't working," and they're like giving up. And then someone said, "Oh, have you tried turning your phone on flight mode when you put it in your pocket?" And so he goes, "No, I haven't tried that." 2 weeks later, after he had started putting it on flight mode every time it was in his pocket, she fell pregnant.
Wow. I mean, there's some
Crazy.
very real effects. Even in the early 1900s, there's a lot of this work has been done. If you go to the 1950s and 60s, the work of Robert O. Becker on studying limb regeneration as it relates to EMF and all that stuff, very, very interesting rabbit holes.
That's another rabbit hole we should we'll dive into another time. But I'd really like to know, before I ask my last question, the best question of the interview, how can people get in touch with you, and who is it that you help? Like, who, if they're listening, who would you like to be working with? I know that you do coaching, so yeah, give us an overview of that.
Yeah, I work with pretty much everybody. I mean, I don't discriminate between men and women. I think that some people focus more on men, some people focus more on women, but I have learned to kind of just welcome everyone so long as I feel like I can help them. If somebody has a very severe ailment, I don't treat chronic disease, I don't do any of that. I just make sure to help people with a preventative approach using the circadian lens applied to all the health fundamentals. And so they can find me on pretty much all platforms. I mean, X, Instagram, um, the 2 a.m. podcast on all platforms as well, but at Zaid K Dahhaj, ZaidKDahhaj is where you can find me essentially everywhere. And then the Substack is pretty cool. That's a very unique deep dive. The Circadian Classroom is what the publication is called. So that's where people can find me.
Super cool. So was that your course? Is that what you just mentioned?
So that's the Substack. The course is separate. That's called the 80/20 course. And if somebody wants that, they can just DM me. I don't have a landing page or anything for that. Marketing I don't think it's my forte, to be honest. But that's something that I have to work on. But either way, they can just DM me on any platform and I can get that to them.
What's the 80/20 course about? It's a video course?
It's all written. I do have videos on it, but I just chose to really make it a PDF and make it as simple as possible. And so it uses the Pareto principle, the idea that 80% of the results come from 20% of the effort, but it's applied to circadian biology and light, water, electromagnetism. But most of it is focused on the circadian piece, whether it be, understanding how to tan properly, how to sunbathe babies, understanding the fundamental concepts involved with how the body works from a circadian perspective, sleep, all that stuff is included there. So it's a very easy way for people to digest a lot of this work.
That seems super important, because one podcast, one article, listen to this, listen to that, someone disqualifies this and says this is the right thing, this is the wrong thing. It's just so confusing, right? So if you've got a nice process and it's written down, that's awesome. So that's really great. Everyone at home, please check out the links. I'll put them around the video. Last question. If you could challenge the audience today, whether it's a daily challenge, a weekly challenge, a month, a yearly long challenge, what would be that one challenge that you think would really support people the most?
Hmm. Um, I would challenge people to develop a healthier relationship with the sun. I think that's a big one that people just, I mean, if you look at most people in this day and age, they truly fear the sun and they believe in the centralized recommendations because they don't do a deep dive on, all these things and they don't educate themselves to a good degree. So, start to implement some of the things that we're talking about. I would challenge people to start sunbathing in the morning time first. You're not going to burn there and you're only going to allow your body to work properly from a circadian timing standpoint. And then microdose midday UV. Just learn to develop the skill of sunbathing with intention. Avoid burns, of course, and that'll differ depending on the person and their skin type. But just learn to cultivate a healthier relationship with the sun, because I think it's ridiculous that people are walking around in existing while also fearing the very thing that essentially gave them life. Just doesn't make sense to me. So definitely do that. And make it
So,
dark after nightfall.
so start having a deeper relationship with the sun, specifically the morning, getting that morning sunlight. It's not going to burn us as much because it's a different frequency. Is that right?
Yeah, so anywhere between sunrise to about 8 or 9 a.m., depending on your latitude, there's technically no UV. So there's no UVA, UVB, so you're not going to burn at all. That's where you get mostly red and infrared, which are very therapeutic light wavelengths. And it's going to allow you to prime your skin for the upcoming UV as well.
It just makes so much sense, right? God created this environment where the more that we match with the environment, the healthier we are. The more that we mismatch and we think that we are God type thing and we can
Mm,
bypass and stand, go against these, as you mentioned, first principles, it just backfires. So it's like get into that alignment, get in that matching with the environment, right?
yeah, that's all it is. It's, the science can get complex, but the action steps are a lot more simple than people would like to make it out to be.
And secondly, with a challenge, get more dark, turn the lights off, look at your electricity in your room and things like that. But guys, this might sound complicated or it might sound simple for you. Regardless, reach out and get some of these resources. He's got some epic stuff here. So any final comments, man? This has been an awesome chat. I've got a page of notes and like so many rabbit holes to go down, but I think I'm gonna have to get some of that PDF at least.
Yeah, no, I'll send it your way. Closing thoughts, just, I'm super grateful to be on podcasts like this, super grateful to interact with people such as yourself. And I think that's what life is really all about, just forming connections and relationships and sharing a message that's needed to a world that is fundamentally sick and in need of it. Can't get better than that.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for your work that you do. Like your desire for mastery is definitely showing, and I look forward to seeing what's coming next for your content. Actually, any sneak peeks? What's coming in terms of content?
It's really hard to say, to be honest, because it's my mind just kind of like randomly thinks about an idea and I just run with it. But I'm trying to think if I can create any sort of maybe short ebooks on how to maybe sunbathe properly, something like that, to really get to the people, because I think that's a subject most people are kind of overwhelmed with. But my mind is jogging nonetheless.
That's awesome. You gotta, and just keeping it simple for people to start integrating it. I think as literally sometimes where I get out of sync with the sun and sunrise, and I start, the first day, the first 2, 3 days, a little bit tricky, but then I naturally start getting up earlier, and it just
Yeah.
snowballs. And the whole day, I feel like I've got 3 days because I've got so much more time. I feel like I'm more productive. It helps me in so many different areas. So thanks again, man. Appreciate your time.
Of course, brother. Thank you.